Alright, so what's going on, guys? My name's Chopper and welcome back everybody to a brand new video on the channel. Today, what we're going to be discussing is the 10 things that only original PUBG players will remember. Now, this game has changed literally so much since its alpha stages and its beginnings that we don't have time to physically go over every single little thing that is different, but I just kind of compiled a list of 10 things that I thought were very noteworthy that I wanted to discuss, and I think that you guys will find interesting as well. But just before we get into that, I have something to give back to you guys. Because the love on these recent PUBG videos has been so absolutely insane, I want to give away the final ones of these miniature PUBG airdrop crates, but the thing is, these are very exclusive and they're not made a whole lot, so honestly this might be the last time you'll ever have a chance to enter for this. So if you want to enter, it's super easy. The only thing you need to do is make sure that number one, you leave a like on the video. Second thing you need to do is be sure that you are subscribed to the channel, as it is a subscriber only contest. And then the final thing you need to let me know is how many of these things listed in this video were you around for in PUBG? How many of these things did you actually experience for yourself? And as soon as you've done those three things, you are entered into the giveaway, and I'll be drawing these very shortly, so good luck. And as one more final thing, you don't have to, it's not required, but if you want to go and join my Discord server, if you'd like some PUBG teammates and things like that, go up in the description, go join the server, and go make a friend. But with that all being said and out of the way, I want to talk about the 10 things that I think were really important that only original PUBG players or people who are on very early in the game are going to remember. So coming in at our number 10 spot is going to be the look of the old scopes. Now, for most of these things on the list, they're not going to be focusing on a lot of aesthetic changes because honestly there's just too many to count, but I think that the scopes are pretty noteworthy as they do make a gameplay difference, and it's interesting to see how far they've come in terms of, you know, how well they look and how realistic they are. So the scope you're seeing on screen right now is the 8x on the SLR, and I'm still kind of getting used to shooting this weapon. It's a little bit different, but the 8x scope makes it really easy to see as it's got a nice magnification and a really realistic kind of scope view. However, it used to look something a little more like this that didn't have any extra effects around it, didn't blur the sides out at all or anything like that, and it just looked generally a little worse. And then also, this is what the old 4x scope used to look like. This one honestly isn't the most drastic of changes, but when you sit back and look at the scopes that we have in the game now and what they look like and how detailed they are compared to when the game was very early on, you'll see a lot of different things where they've improved on that you might not even notice until you actually compare them, and I'm very appreciative of how they've changed, and I really like the new scopes, to be honest. Now, coming in at our number 9 spot is something that I miss really dearly, and this is going to be using the M16 with the 8x scope. Now, unfortunately, with the new patch, you cannot put an 8x scope on any of the assault rifles. There is a brand new 6x scope that you can use for those ones, and it's good, but it's not quite like using the old 8x M16 back in the day. That was the meta. If you were never around for that, it was the best feeling in the world when you could get that current setup and you would destroy that entire lobby. However, it was also very devastating when you got killed with it by an enemy because, granted, yes, it was super powerful, but it was also one of the most fun things in the game to use, in my opinion. But now, taking our number 8 spot, back in the day, we used to not be able to vault. Now, if you're just brand new to PUBG or you played the game, you know, very recently and you're just now getting into it, you might not be able to imagine PUBG without the vaulting mechanic, but believe me, we used to play without it. Now, there is an alternative to the vault, we'll call it, and you probably know what I'm talking about, some of you players, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. It's higher up on the list. However, there was no vaulting mechanic at one point, and in my opinion, it made the pace of the game a lot slower as you couldn't really jump out of windows easily. Getting over barriers was pretty tough as well, so I think the vaulting is probably one of the best things that's ever happened to the game. But for a while there, we just had to play and make do without it, and I think it's really interesting to see how far this game has come since its beginnings. But now, coming in at our number 7 spot, this is going to be the addition of the brand new town Kameshki. So as you can see on the map right now, there's a town called Kameshki, and it's at like the top right corner of the map. But however, this used to not be here at all. Like, the actual land itself was still intact, but there was no buildings and there was no name above it. It was just flat land, and they added it one day, and it was a really nice kind of delight when we logged onto the game and saw it. Now, to be honest with you, it's not a very popular town, and it's just extremely out of the way. People don't tend to go there. It's about as popular as Zarky these days, you know what I'm saying, which gets absolutely no love. But hey, if you just want to go there and experience it for yourself, if you've never been there, I recommend drop at least once and check it out. I really like seeing old gameplay of people around that area, and the town just doesn't exist, like it's physically not there, and it's a little weird to see it, but it's interesting, and I like that kind of stuff. Now, coming in at our number 6 spot is a crazy early one, and I don't know how many of you guys are gonna remember this one, but there was a time where the ocean was blocked off. Like, the swimming mechanic hadn't been perfected yet, wasn't implemented into the game. It just wasn't ready, so any of the barriers where you could get into the water were blocked off, and you had to like go around it. And this was probably one of the things that made the game very, very slow, as the water isn't an extremely useful part of the game, but definitely when there's island games and like the circle is just perfectly set up for it, you'll end up either swimming to the island, or if you want to take a boat, either way is perfectly acceptable. But I couldn't really find any good gameplay of the ocean being blocked off. But for those of you who were early enough on into PUBG to remember that that was a thing, it's not surprising when you think about it, because PUBG came from extremely humble beginnings when it was first being developed and that sort of thing, so the game wasn't crisp as soon as it dropped, right? Now, coming in at the number 5 spot is the look of the old energy drink. Now, I said at the beginning of the video that I wasn't really going to talk about aesthetic changes, as there's just too many of them, but I think that this is probably the biggest and most important one, or at least the one that the community was most vocal about that we saw. And I've also talked about this in a previous video as well. I made basically an entire episode on it, but I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the look of this. It was very similar to the look of an actual Red Bull in real life, and now this is kind of what they look like. This is the new aesthetic look to it. But if you remember the old energy drink and you see gameplay from all the way back then, it's just kind of cool to look back and see that that used to be a thing as well. Personally, I prefer the old look. It doesn't really bother me. Like, I'm not going to get up in arms about it, but there are literally so many posts on Reddit of people like vouching to change it back to the old drink, and they didn't really publicly state as to why this change was made, but I'm just going to assume it has a lot to do with copyright issues and infringement, that kind of stuff. And they didn't, as their game was growing, they didn't want to get in that kind of legal trouble as their game is becoming very successful. So I can definitely see them kind of trying to cover themselves that way, but it's just something that I'm a little bit nostalgic for. Now, coming in at the number 4 spot is the old spawn island. Now, a lot of you guys remember this when Erangel was the only available map. This is where you would enter the game every single time. Like, nowadays it spawns you in different areas of the map, and there's no guns around on the table either, but back in the day when you would spawn here, there was one of each weapon on these benches that were at the spawn island that you could just pick up and kind of like practice with before you jump into the game, and it was a lot of fun. I don't really know why they decided to change that, but because I kind of like the spawn island the way it was and having everything on the table ready for you, but they decided to make a change when the new map came out and that kind of thing, and it was just kind of interesting to see how that used to be real as well. Let me know down in the comment section if you remember the original, the OG version of the spawn island, and talking to everybody there, shooting the guns around, just having a good time for around a minute or so. Good times. But now, coming in at our number 3 spot is another one that was really, really early on in the game that I'm even having a hard time remembering, but a lot of you guys may be around for this one, when the windows were non-destructible. That sounds kind of weird, like windows that couldn't be broken. And also, I'll go a step further with that, and there also used to be windows that didn't have any bars, like a lot of them have now, where you really weren't supposed to be able to jump out of them, and then they ended up adding the windows where they could be broken, and that changed the game a lot, where people can now shoot out and in of windows, and then obviously being able to vault out of them as we have today. Windows has gone through a huge evolution that you might not have even really understood or realized that was back in the game. Like, it's crazy to see how much this has physically changed. But now, coming in at our number 2 spot was one that I was alluding to earlier, and this was something called the crouch jump. A lot of you guys probably remember this thing, and the crouch jump was something that I loved and used all the time. Now, if you don't know what that was, this was before vaulting was implemented into the game, and when you were able to hit C and your spacebar or whatever your jump and crouch thing was at the same time in synchrony, you would be able to jump a lot higher than you otherwise would, and you could use this to get on top of crates or rooftops that were otherwise inaccessible. And you'd figure that as soon as like the PUBG staff figured out about this glitch that they would patch it, but no, until they added vaulting, while that was still in the works, they said like they encouraged the use of the crouch jump, and it was so much fun. Not to mention, it was the only way that you could get out of a window. You couldn't regular jump to escape a window, you had to crouch jump at the exact right time, and once you got good at it, you would be able to outmaneuver so many other players. And then they added vaulting, and then now everybody can get out of windows, and the crouch jump is no longer able to be used. But it was another thing that I'm also kind of reminiscing on and a little bit nostalgic for as well. Let me know in the comment section how many of you guys remember crouch jumping and or used it. Maybe you got really good at it, and maybe you didn't get the hang of it at all, as that did happen to some players, and it's really nothing to be ashamed of, because at the end of the day, it was a glitch that was never intended, or it was supposed to be used in the game. So maybe you guys did it, maybe you didn't. But now finally coming in at our number 1 spot is not a super old one, but eventually it's going to get to a point where a lot of new players won't even think twice when we talk about this. But now level 3 helmets are only in airdrop crates, and that makes me really sad. Now, to be fair, I think it's overall good for the balance of the game. I played with it quite a bit in this recent patch, and I didn't think I would like it at first, where level 3 helmets cannot be found just on the ground. I thought that was going to mess up the game a little bit, but turns out it's fine. But it's also not the same feeling when you find a level 3 helmet on the ground and you get really excited. Now you have to go out of your way to get it out of an airdrop crate, and if you see somebody in the game with it now, either they killed somebody who did get an airdrop or they got it themselves. Also, can I just get one F in the comment section from everybody to pay respects for the level 3 helmet being a common spawn? I'm gonna miss it. You just don't get that much playtime with it anymore unless you're constantly chasing drops every single game, which isn't always practical. They're not completely like irrelevant now, and they're still in existence, but they're just so much more rare, and you'll never have a chance of finding one as a common spawn anymore. But if you have been playing PUBG since the beginning, you'll remember that they were pretty much everywhere, especially like military base, the school. All of the big names had them littered around the area. Even though I said a little earlier, I think it's overall good for the balance of the game. I'm a really big fan of how it plays. There's just something about finding a level 3 helmet and having them in the game that I'm just gonna miss, and it really does make me sad. I don't know about you guys, but that's one of the changes that isn't one of the oldest things, and it's very recent, but eventually it's gonna get to a point where a lot of newer PUBG players won't even know that that used to be a thing where level 3 helmets were common, and that's kind of crazy to think about, but it is what it is. But anyways, guys, I think we can go ahead and pretty much wrap the video up here. That is gonna be the top 10 things that only original PUBG players remember. If you guys did enjoy it, then be sure you do leave a thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel if you are brand new. And by the way, guys, look how close we are to 100K. If you'd like to help me out, it'd be greatly appreciated. We're so close to 100,000, and it's been a huge goal of mine since the beginning. So if you'd like to sub up, I'd really appreciate it, and let me know what you guys thought about this video. But anyways, go enjoy the Discord server if you guys haven't done already, and I will speak to you all over there, and I'll see you all on the next live stream or the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and peace out.